Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunakto Sahaviryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. So we will continue from our previous class on Vedanta as the science of human possibilities. We were discussing the classification of the human personality as fivefold, which is the Panchakosha theory. Both derive their origin from the Upanishad, and the other classification is based on three types of shariras: Sthula Sharira, gross body; Sukshma Sharira, the subtle body; and the Karana Sharira, which is the causal body, which survives. It is this causal body which survives death, the physical death, I mean, and the soul transmigrates. It's the causal body that transmigrates with a little bit of the remnants of the subtle body. Because as we discussed, there is another classification which we can do, which is according to the five koshas, three types of bodies in the increasing order of subtlety, that is gross, subtle, causal. But some of the Upanishads, like the Taittiriya Upanishad, classifies the human personality into five distinct or five levels, or you may say five koshas. That is Annamaya kosha, and the more subtle aspect of the Annamaya kosha, which is the Pranamaya kosha, which gives life to the physical body, the different parts of the body and the organs are made living by this vital force which is known as prana. And we also discussed there are five pranas, depending on it's actually one prana classified as five different because of the functional change or the functional difference. Some forces are responsible for certain functions of the body like breathing, circulation, digestion, and then production of heat, keeping the body at a particular temperature, which is the Udana Vayu or Udana Prana. So we discussed all that. That has been the subject of discussion for a very long time. And we also discussed in detail the functions of each level of this Panchakosha: Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha. Mano and Vijnanamaya Koshas are two distinct aspects of the same mind. What we normally call as our mind is made of two distinct parts, or you may say two distinct functions. One is the function which is the reactive mind, which reacts to external stimulus through the sense organs. And as you go on training the mind, the manas, the capacity to react in a very well informed way changes. If you are educated, you react in a particular way. A person who is still at the level of animal is highly reactive in nature. It's just tit for tat, and the senses give him certain inputs, and instinctively he reacts, just as animals react. Of course, they do have some kind of mental training, or the manas is developed in some of the animals where you will see certain functions like hearing, like responding. They are more subtle. In fact, they respond much better than human beings. They can hear, they can smell better. So it's not always that the reaction is better in a human being. Animals can be have a much more better manas, manas in the sense the capacity to react to external stimulus. So they can see, some animals, some birds can see better than us, some can hear better than us, some can smell, identify objects through smell, like the dogs. So it's not that it is uniform. The manas also varies. The reactive capacity of the mind changes from person, animal to animal, species to species. And in human beings themselves, this capacity to react is different in different people. So depending on the capacity of the sense organs, some may not, some may not have sharp observation, or some may be observing everything perfectly, but the reactionary time or the reactions that they produce are slow because of the slow processing of the thoughts. There are many things which are involved. The neurophysiology is responsible for that. The brain, the spinal system, the sympathetic nervous system. So the nervous reaction to all action, all the inputs is not the same, even in human beings. And it can vary a lot. And finally, there is this question of education. The through proper training, you react in a proper way. So naturally, that reaction, if one is as trained as manas in such a way, he has developed many skill sets, he reacts in a much better way than other human beings, because the only fact that they do so is because they have received some kind of skill training. So they react in a much efficient way. So that is why we see a lot of different mental capacities because of the varying degree of development of the manas. But so the manas, as I said, is made of mind, the reactive mind, which is nothing but a skillful mind. If the skills have been taught to that mind, how to react properly, how to react in a measured way, how to rationalize. But at the same time, there is a higher aspect of the mind, which is known as buddhi, which is the that part of the mind which can discriminate, which can make choices, make the right choice, especially in different circumstances. It can make a very noble or a correct choice, which because of which they need not regret later. But if the mind is absolutely in that reactive mode, it will just react and maybe repent later. It will think, it doesn't use the buddhi or the wisdom to react in a very discriminative or a very well informed, discerning way. But in any case, both the aspects of the mind, whether it is the lower mind or the higher mind, and Bhagavad Gita speaks of raising the mind by the mind. That means mind in this case has been referred to as Atma. So raise the Atma by your Atma. That actually means raise the lower mind by your higher mind. So you have to develop the buddhi through spiritual practices, which is the main intention of the Gayatri Mantra. The Gayatri Mantra, which is the mother of all mantras, they say, the greatest, the essence of the whole Vedas is in this Gayatri, which were further uh, condensed or consolidated in the Mantra Shastra with shorter mantras which are equally powerful. But as a prayer and as a mantra, both as a prayer and a mantra, Gayatri Mantra is a prayer for awakening this higher aspect of the mind which is known as buddhi. So, our education, and I'm not tired of repeating this again and again, distinctly gives importance to both manas and buddhi. When you say the mind in Indian context or the Indian uh, aspect of mental development includes both manas and the buddhi. So that is why they say Gayatri has to be given at a young age. By the time he goes to school between 6 and 8, that was the tradition because they thought that there should not be just a highly developed, skillful mind without this buddhi. without wisdom, that mind can be dangerous. It may possess certain skills, but if it doesn't know how to choose rightly, properly, if it has not trained the mind to choose the right thing, then even that intelligence can be harmful, not only to himself but to others, to the entire society. So they wanted to make sure that along with Manas, Buddhi is also developed. So that much is clear now, according to Indian psychology, yoga psychology, as stated by Patanjali, though he clearly does not try to distinguish between the two minds. For him, anything, our mind can be perceived only through our thoughts. That is a typical way of perceiving the mind, or philosophy, uh, developing a mental philosophy, which Buddha also did. He said we can know the mind because you are different from the mind. But does that mean Buddhism accepted the idea of the soul or Atma? He doesn't, they are silent about it. Whereas Patanjali says the Purusha, being ever changeless and ever present as a witness, sees the different modes of the mind. So, according to Patanjali, it is only the Purusha or the self intelligent Atma, the Lord of the mind, who is changeless, and the modifications of the mind are invariably known to it. So there should be an unchanging reality behind this changing mind. It's not the changing mind, it's the changing waves of the mind, vritti. So mind is known only through vrittis and changing vrittis. So that is why the goal of Patanjali is to go beyond the mind to find out who that Purusha is so that we can get rid of all suffering. Buddha also preached almost the same thing. He said that we observe that it is the mind which is the chief cause of all our misery and problems. All the problems he traced to the incomplete development, or not lack of evolution of the mind. So he believed that as you go on training your mind, watching your mind, analyzing your mind, using the power of buddhi, though he doesn't clearly, they call it awareness. When they say mindfulness meditation or awareness meditation, to be mindful is to be mindful of the witnessing self, which is known as the Purusha. Though they do not use this word, it's exactly the same as Patanjali. Sada gyatah chittavritti chittavrittayah tat prabhoh purushasya parinamitvat. Means the Purusha, or the the changeless spirit or the soul, the witness, is the one who sees this changing mind. So when the mind is unhappy, or the mind is full of dukkha vrittis or sorrow, the self thinks that it is sorrowful. If there are vrittis of joy, the mind, the Purusha thinks he is happy because he is identifying himself with the mind. He is not able to separate it. So as he goes on watching his own thoughts and refuses to identify, just as Buddhism says, you have to just be a witness. Vipassana, you see properly. Vipassana means to see clearly. We see now, but it's mixed up. Our buddhi is mixed up with our mind. Our likes and dislikes and all the kleshas give a colored picture of what we see. We don't see in a very neutral way. We react, we have a preconceived notion about some person or some situation and just react to it. So our mind is always, most of the times, it is in a reactive mode. So Vedanta says, when you develop the buddhi, then you come to a witness mode. That buddhi has the capacity to stay aloof and judge whether the mind is reacting properly. Is it reasonable to react? The animals don't think, they don't have this capacity of buddhi, they just react because their mind is not capable or has not evolved to a state or a higher state of uh, mental activity. So that is why to distinguish between buddhi, manas, and also the different states of mind. Patanjali says these are different states of the mind. You cannot know the mind as such, you don't know the mind. You just know the mind at a particular time. Say, for example, if you say, I, my mind is very unhappy, it's not an absolute statement. I may be very happy after a few seconds. I do not know. Right now, I can say lot of unhappy vrittis of sorrow have are rising, and I'm not able to do anything about it. So you're observing, these sort thoughts of sorrow are coming, or thoughts of fear, these thoughts of things that you dislike, the fear, anger, and all those things is a result of dvesha. Dvesha means, Patanjali says that there can be three reactions basically: raga, dvesha, and abhinivesha. Raga means attachment to or liking for certain things that you like, that you wish to have. So we have developed right from childhood. The child is trained by their parents, by the surroundings to have strong likes and dislikes. In the beginning, the child has no choice. Whatever is given to that child, it accepts without any strong likes or dislikes. Then slowly as it grows, it expresses certain things, partly because of its own samskaras or partly because how it is schooled. That I don't like uh, a colored person because I am white. All these differences or likes and dislikes because of somebody's race, somebody's ethnicity, somebody's religion, or somebody's preference for a particular choice of food. All these likes and dislikes, you classify yourself, and the mind becomes intensely complex, full of likes and dislikes. So I gravitate towards things that I like, people that I like, and our life is not complete. That is what Patanjali says. The buddhi has not been developed, and it is not capable of seeing things as they are. So you always want to see the things that you like or be away from things that you don't like. So many of the reactions are affected by this strong likes and dislikes. So that is why we categorize ourselves either as good people, these are good people, these are bad people, these are good things, I like this food, I don't like this food. And that causes joy and sorrow. That's a very scientific way. The modifications of the mind are because of these kleshas. And then there is fear, the fear of death, fear of uh, losing the gross body, the subtle body, everything, losing our own identity, asmita, or all these kleshas result in modifications of the mind which give rise to sorrow or joy. If it is dvesha, it is sorrow. If it is raga, if you are always in a position to get what you like, at least during that period, you are full of joy. But you cannot guarantee that you'll always come across things or people or situations as you like. There'll be many people, many situations, many things that you don't like, but still you will have to encounter them and deal with them. So Patanjali says you are just observing. The Purusha is observing both likes and dislikes. The modifications of the mind is what we see. We are not the mind, but at the same time, we identify ourselves with these different mental states, which he has defined as vritti. So he says you can meditate or you can know your true nature only when you bring a rittis to a stop. You can't see if your mind is always fluctuating. You can't see the objective reality very objectively. It becomes very subjective depending on the state of your mind. A sorrowful mind, even if it is given something good, it will not be in a position to enjoy it. Or if the mind is in a good mood, even certain unpleasant or things that he or she doesn't like, if they come, they just take it in their stride. They just ignore it. That is because their mind is full of joy. Somehow they have transcended this likes and dislikes. So that is why they say the contents of the mind in their uh, unmanifest state. Now, this is another thing we have to remember. We know only those thoughts that have risen to the surface, that is Sukshma Sharira, or the Manomaya Kosha or the Vijnanamaya Kosha. We see the thoughts are rising, but we do not know, we don't go to the source of those thoughts. Why are these particular thoughts coming to me? So that to know that, you have to go to another level of our personality that is known as Anandamaya Kosha, or in the threefold classification, it is known as Karana Sharira, the causal state. So that is where our subtle impressions are there. So if you get a hint what our Karana Sharira is, or if you somehow reach that level and try to solve the problem from there, then you will see these thoughts of sorrow will not come at all, or even if they come, it will be less. So there, to reach that state, to reach a state where you are just a witness of your thoughts, you know the contents of your thought, you can control the thoughts that are capable of rising in your mind. That is the most ideal state. So, the Purusha or the Atma, if in our Vedanta it is known as Atma, in Sankhya it is known as Purusha, or Yoga also, Yoga philosophy, it is known as Purusha, the pure element which is the subject, which is the eternal subject, which does not change. So that is the goal of yoga. Today it's the International Day of Yoga. So wherever you go, you'll see only 1/8 of the Ashtanga Yoga seems to be, people seem to practice, if not one, but at least one or two asana and pranayama. Beyond that, a little bit of meditation is attempted. But the real yoga is defined as chitta vritti nirodha. So all these things are just preparatory steps. Ashtanga yoga, all the asanas, pranayama and all, and even the dharana are all leading to the real thing, which is dhyana. So at the at the level of dhyana, we can say we are in a, more or less, we have just entered the state of yoga as it is. So we will be the real witness, not a witness which is colored by our likes and dislikes. That is not yoga. When we try to concentrate our mind, we are trying to concentrate with an inferior mind. No doubt it is better than nothing, but the buddhi is not fully activated. The higher mind, the Vijnanamaya kosha, is not activated. So, according to Advait Vedanta, this is according to yoga, but according to Advait Vedanta, they also have their own idea of the mind, which is appears to be slightly different, but it is the same. According to Advait Vedanta, which is the highest aspect of Vedanta that a human mind can conceive of, the mental modifications are presented, they call it mental modifications, which is also known as vritti in Patanjali. So they can be witnessed by the sakshi. Sakshi means witness self. The self which witnesses all these things is sakshi. And it does not require an intermediary. To study your own mind, you don't have to take the help of others. That is why psychology is known as the king of sciences, where you don't depend on others. For other sciences, you need external instruments. You need, of course, you need some kind of guidance. But here, when you come to meditation, when you come to the science of yoga, you are your own guide, your own teacher. Of course, some guidelines can be given by the teacher, the methods of, because you cannot, unless somebody has risen to that level of Sri Ramakrishna, the our own Sakshi is watching our own mind. The mental modifications are known only to us unless you have the capacity to read somebody else's mind. It is a highly subjective thing. So Advaita Vedanta says that is why they believe that we don't need an intermediate or intermediary, anything to study our own mind. Maybe we need an intermediary to study external objects. We need the eye. If one is blind, one cannot see. But to read one's own mind or to study one's own mind, you don't need an intermediary. The Sakshi within us, the subject, he can directly perceive. All he has to do is go to a quiet place and try to, because in the rush of this world, we simply cannot appreciate the idea that we can watch our own thoughts. To watch our own thoughts, one has to resort to some kind of solitude, if not physical, at least mental solitude. You have to have the patience to identify yourself with the Sakshi who is watching your own mind. Some people call it introspection, but introspection is a very ordinary word. Here it is trying to meditate. Trying to meditate means trying to watch and reduce the vrittis of the mind. So the mind is not the instrumental cause. It's not an instrument like our eye to perceive the outside world. Though we, in a loose way, we say our mind is our window to the world. In a way, it is because the lower mind is definitely our window because the eye will give certain signals, transmit certain impressions, which the mind takes to the brain, and the brain understands certain things based on previous memory or thoughts. So, in that way, it is this mental states, or you may say the manas is the cause of perception. But when you come to the real mind, when you come to the sakshi, it can just it doesn't need an intermediate cause to understand. You can directly observe your own thoughts. But other schools, other than Advaita Vedanta, just say that just as you have an eye, you have a ear to give you inputs, the mind also gives input to the soul. So whatever be the interpretation of different schools of philosophy, the mental states definitely are not us. We have this mental state, we possess this mental state. We can react to it or not react to it depending on our spiritual training or our the expertise that we have in our meditation. So that is why you find a meditative person will not react like Buddha. There were other assistants or his disciples who were walking with him. And when they begged for food, very often they would be scolded, some rude people used to make remarks, and the disciples were upset. But Buddha's mind was never disturbed. He just maintained that calm, that uh, composure. He was never disturbed because he was in that state where he could just see how the mind is reacting to the external abuse or whatever they are talking. He did not let those thoughts or those words or those sights to disturb his inner composure. That is the goal of dhyana, or in they in the Buddhist thought they call it the it is known as a type of vipassana. You see things not the way everybody sees, through the lens of the mind. You don't see it with a reactive mind. You see it with a mind which is a witness self, Sakshi. So you are just a witness. Just as suppose you are watching a movie, there may be a lot of emotions and lot of fights, quarrels going on. But if you are a witness, it is after all on the screen. What I'm seeing is not real. It will in no way affect me. There may be a war going on on the screen, and I may feel that I'm in the midst of that war, but I know that I am separate. The moment the movie ends, the film ends, everything will go back to normal, only the screen will remain. So that is how the human mind has to be trained according to other schools like Sankhya, where even if the mind is considered to be an internal organ, they don't say it is an external organ like eye, nose, ear. They say it is an internal organ. The external organs provide the input. The mind decides and the mind reacts. Because the mind reacts, they think it is also an organ. It is also an instrument. That may be true because they are talking of the reactive mind. In that state, in that lower state of mind, it is definitely slightly superior to our sense organs. They also give inputs. Mind also gives us input. You see a sorrowful thing, and the mind says, "This is a very, uh, this is something you have to cry now." The mind, Swami Vivekananda says, when somebody asked what is the use of meditation, he says meditation makes you free from the slavery to nature. So he explains what is slavery to nature. He says, our mind, you see how it is a slave to the whole nature. Somebody gives you something, you feel happy. And somebody takes away something, and the mind tells you now you cry, and you cry. You give the instruction to the sense organs, to your eyes, and you start crying or you start lamenting, start scolding, you start reacting in different ways. So he says, whatever happens outside controls how you react. So that means you are a slave to Prakriti, the nature. Nature is made of many things. The objects outside, the sense organs, our own eyes are the objects. They are also objects, just as we see things outside. Our eyes also are objects. They can be seen. They can be seen by the doctor. They can be operated upon. So they are also objects. We are using it as instruments, but the instrument itself is an object. When you are dealing with certain instruments, though you are doing surgery with it, you are using the instrument to do an operation. You know that both are objects. One is the body on which you are operating and the instrument with which you are operating. Both are objects. So similarly, Vedanta, Sankhya, Mimamsa, and they all say mind is an internal organ. It is also an object because you can see something. The subject, that is the Purusha within, the Indriya which brings that information, and the mind that gives a reaction, both are equally objective. One is little more subtle, another is gross because you can see the eye, but you can't see the mind. You can just perceive it. And you can perceive it according to them only when there is a reaction. If the mind just, if the vrittis are stopped according to Patanjali, then you see the Purusha only. You see the world, but you know it is separate. So according to yoga, it is actually Viyoga. What you do is you separate Purusha from Prakriti, and that gives you joy, whether you call it Nirvana, whether you call it Kaivalya, or whether you call it Nirvikalpa Samadhi or Samadhi. There are so many ways of expressing the same thing. The joy you get is because you don't identify yourself with the mental modifications. So the mental states may change, and you feel sorrow only because you identify with the sorrowful thoughts of the mind. If you are detached from them, you you will be free. That is what yoga, the goal of yoga is. So when you say karmendriya, gyanendriya, that is the way Vedanta describes. Karmendriya means the organs of action, and Gyanendriya is the organs. They are also organs, but they don't directly, they may be moving, they may be doing certain functions, but then their main purpose is to give you knowledge. So eyes, nose, ears, you get the sound. They don't have to move. They will just receive the external input, the sound, the sight, the smell. And then the karmendriyas, the mind will give instruction. Mind, which is also an atindriya, they call it antarindriya. Antarindriya means internal organ. So the external organ gives the information to the internal organ who says, now you do this. If it is a well developed mind, he said, just ignore it. If you don't have to get upset. But if the mind is not developed, if the person who reacts, the antarindriya is not developed, and it just tells you, oh, that person has scolded you, just give him back, give the scolding back to him. So you just shout at him. That is how animals behave because they are instinctive. Their mind is very rudimentary. They believe this antarindriya. In that respect, it is not only antarindriya, it is very much part of their indriyas. In that case, at a gross level, it is true. Mind is also an indriya. So, a particular aspect of the mind which gives rise to, according to them, it gives rise to action. So if you react, then only there will be action. If you just watch and don't react, then you are separating yourself from your Gyanendriyas and the Karmendriyas. They are being received, the impressions are being received. And all the impressions, the visual impression that you get, the visual perception, the ears also, they are all Gyanendriyas. Similarly, the hands, the legs, organs of speech, evacuation, and generation are called Karmendriyas because they perform volitional act when the will comes into play. That is why Karma Yoga is nothing but developing and controlling the willpower that is within us. So when you just perceive things and keep quiet, then it doesn't help you. You have to act upon that. So the willpower has to be developed. You may have a very good, we may all have very good resolution that I should do this, I should do that. I know many things. I've been reading Advaita, I know all these wonderful scriptures. I have a very good knowledge, theoretical knowledge. But unfortunately, the will to practice it is not there. So karmendriyas are not active. I don't act upon what I think. In thoughts, I am my Jnana Yoga is perfect. Even my Bhakti Yoga may be perfect, but Karma Yoga will prove that whether your willpower is also transformed. The volitional act, which is an informed reaction to all the inputs in a proper way using buddhi very wisely, is known as Karma Yoga. So, therefore, whatever be the theory, mind is just an intermediary. So, that is the conclusion. So, whether you follow Advait Vedanta or you follow any other philosophy, Indian philosophy, everywhere the mind is considered to be a superior organ or manas, a superior organ, more more subtle than the Gyanendriyas and of course more subtle than the Karmendriyas also because it is the mind who decides, which decides. Now, as I said, there are two minds. The higher mind, which is buddhi, which can guide. It's not necessary that the reactive mind will always listen. That is why some people, they say, I act on instinct. I don't think. Because people find it so difficult to think logically, rationally. If one just rationally thinks and meditates and uh, makes his higher mind or the Vijnanamay kosha or the buddhi a little developed, if that aspect of the mind is developed, then all our reactions, the reactions of the mind will not be instinctive and will solve a lot of problems by reacting in a very proper way. So that requires training. That is what spiritual training is all about. Why do we meditate? Just to awaken the buddhi. The first step in all our meditation, prayer, and all the practices that we do is to awaken a sense, awaken this buddhi so that it can tell us what to do, when to do, find out, instruct the mind. Instead of being a slave to the mind and the senses and other things, we become the masters. We tell the mind whether to react, what will happen if you react in this way, what will happen if you don't react, or what will happen if you don't react in a particular way. So the thinking, feeling, and willpower, all three, which are aspects of the lower mind, are refined and controlled by the buddhi. So now, if you see the Kathopanishad, we'll come to the Upanishad because we are dealing with Vedanta here. Whatever be the theories of mind, I just gave you a bird's eye view. Whatever be, whether it is considered to be a higher Indriya or an independent entity, Kathopanishad says, and Gita also says that, Indriyebhya param mana manasa Sattvam Uttamam, the higher than the Indriyas is the mind. That means they say there is an entity known as mind, which may be the reactive mind, but it is definitely higher than the Indriyas. Indriyas will just convey the information. The mind is higher than the mind, then they again don't stop there. Higher than the Indriyas, the Gyanendriyas, the sense organs, is the mind, and higher than the mind is the Buddhi. So that means they are clearly distinguishing between Manas and Buddhi. Bhagavad Gita, Manusmriti, they all, though they include the mind in the Indriyas, they also believe in Buddhi. For example, Bhagavad Gita says, uh, Sri Krishna says, tells Arjuna, Indriyanam manas chasmi. In the 11th chapter, if you remember, Vibhuti Yoga. Vibhuti means all the different species, different things of the world. He is trying to show that you can use this meditation. If you meditate on a tree, meditate on the best available tree where his glory is manifest more. If you meditate on light, then meditate on the best possible light, which is the sun. That's why we meditate on the sun. We don't meditate on a lamp. The sun is the highest according to the capacity of the mind. That's the highest possible light that we can imagine for most of our meditation. So Sri Krishna is telling so many things. Among the mountains, I am Himalayas. I am not a small mountain. If at all you have to meditate on my glory, the nature, the vibhuti, then meditate on the greatest among that. So in that he says, among all the indriyas, I am manaha cha asmi, manas cha asmi. That means among all the organs. So it has Bhagavad Gita uh, according to Bhagavad Gita, as opposed to the Kathopanishad, which is Vedanta. The There they are making a very clear distinction: Indriyas, Mana, and then Buddhi. Whereas here, Mana is also considered to be a Indriya. That's why it says, among all the Indriyas, I am far, I am the mind, Manas Chasmi. Because there are so many Indriyas, but 10 in for 5 Gyanendriyas and 5 Karmendriyas. But the mind is far superior to them. That is why though they consider the mind to be a higher uh, Indriya, definitely Buddhi is not an Indriya. Shankara, of course, he accepts both these views. He says it doesn't matter whether you consider it. Definitely there is a lower mind and higher mind. The mind is the internal instrument, antakarana, of inferential knowledge. There are two kinds of knowledge. Direct knowledge, another is inferential knowledge. Means you see a smoke and you infer that I'm not seeing the fire, but because there is a smoke, there was a fire or there is fire somewhere. There cannot be smoke without the fire. So that is known as anumana or inferential knowledge. So all the functions such as deliberation, to think, determination, once you deliberate between pros and cons of different things, you uh, determine a particular, you make some decision, reasoning, willpower, volition, recollection, that is smriti, doubt. Many times, my doubt is also a vritti, sanshaya. So many times things are not very obvious. You see certain things, then you start doubting, oh, am I seeing the right thing? So all this imagination, they are all accepted as different mental modes. They all agree, whichever school you belong to, whichever Vedic philosophy you believe, they all believe. Only thing is, some people classify mind with the Indriyas, some people will not classify the mind with the, they say mind is a higher Indriya. So in any way, the mind is an instrument, and as I said, the lower mind is often classified with the Indriyas in Bhagavad Gita and other philosophies, whereas in Kathopanishad, it very clearly three entities are accepted because of this verse. Indriyebhya param manaha manasya sattvam uttamam. That means mm, in superior to the 10 indriyas, Gyanendriyas, Karmendriyas are grossest, Gyanendriyas are slightly higher. Mana, then Buddhi. I am the higher than the mind is the intellect. So, in any case, the Vijnanamaya Kosha or the intellect is the choice making capacity of the mind, or the mind which can discriminate, discern, and the information is that is presented by the mind is weighed by analysis, by discerning between good and bad, what is to be done, what is not to be done. That faculty is not with the manas. Manas will just give you some kind of instinctive knowledge. If there is fire, it will give inferential knowledge. The mind will tell you, see, since you are seeing a smoke, there is some fire there, so be careful. Since you smell something, the Indriyas will tell you. In fact, in that respect, animals can be better than us, because if a dog smells, sniffs some certain things which human beings cannot, their sense organs may be more powerful than others. That doesn't mean their minds are better than ours. We may not have speciality like some vultures and some eagles. They have very sharp eyes, much better than us. But that doesn't mean they have a highly developed mind. One of the sense organs is powerful, whereas we have, within the limitations of our sense organs, we have the capacity to develop certain skills to react in a proper way. That's all. So we react in a proper way that makes us more human. And if we react in with lot of wisdom, once the buddhi starts developing, which, as I said, is part of our school education, because our ancestors never distinguished. They said, don't develop skills without developing buddhi, because then you will be very sorry. You may give the best education to your children and maybe make him a highly skilled person, but if he doesn't know how to use the skill in the right way, in a proper way, he will make himself and others miserable. So he may be a genius, but he may be an evil genius. So that is why, as I said, they insisted on development of manas and buddhi together. So that means, according to the Upanishads or according to any school, this mind is distinct from the sense organs and the physical body, and it requires a special training, especially higher spiritual training, to separate the reactive mind with the discriminative mind, buddhi. So two separate parallel developments take place, evolution of the mind takes place. One is gives rise to secular knowledge, secular mind, which of course has to be skilled, otherwise you can't earn a living. You have to know how to react properly. Otherwise, a crude mind will be just like animals. It won't serve much purpose. So manas, development of manas is definitely necessary. No doubt the sense organs which enable you, the sense organs have to be also to be good. For example, in Kathopanishad, you will find the sense organs are compared to the horses. So in a chariot, the horses are to be really good. If the horses are not good, definitely the chariot, but though horses are essential, they are not everything. Only with good horses you can't run a chariot properly. You need good reins. Reins are compared to the mind in Kathopanishad. That means the mind is different than the horses. So as compared to the other philosophies, as against other philosophies, Kathopanishad insists on considering mind to be a different entity. But it doesn't matter even if it is called as a higher indriya, because it is connected to the indriyas. Mind is the organ which processes all the information that Gyanendriyas give, and then it also gives instructions to react. But Vedanta says, or the Upanishad says, it is the buddhi. So, who is the buddhi in this case? The horses are the sense organs. Definitely, yes, very good horses are necessary. And the reins, it's not enough if the horses are, but if you have very weak reins, which will break, if the horses are stronger than the reins that the charioteer is holding, then it will break. So you need a strong mind to control those horses, the indriyas. So you have to see that the indriyas give you the right information. That's why you see if there is a deformity, either you don't see properly, have defect in vision, defect in hearing, it it is not a good thing in the sense it may not be essential. If one is already spiritual, then he can transcend even the mind. If he can deal directly with the mind, it is good. But most of the cases you will find when you evolve, it is you first evolve the lower mind, and along with that, at the age of 6 or 8, our rishis knew you have to force the schooling system or the school system, the Gurukula in that case, to develop simultaneously the buddhi. Because otherwise, you can't wait, you can't say. That is why the age was fixed. Nowadays, it is just reduced to a ritual. Now, at least in some traditions, at least the marriage is considered to be sacred in the Hindu tradition. So the priest will ask a foolish question. It is very foolish, but he will ask. He will ask whether his Upanayana has been done. So they will ask him. They will say, no, it has not been. Then one day before marriage, they will do it. Then the function is not, purpose is not served. He had, he should have undergone. Maybe as a ritual, it's not enough just to have the Upanayana ritual and have a big feast for all people. That is not the purpose, but the buddhi, the development, the Gayatri Mantra is the main important thing there. That you are telling the boy that you go to school, get all the knowledge you are able to get the best knowledge, go to the best universities, deal with your manas, without which you will not succeed in life. But at the same time, along with that schooling, even at the tender age, he is asked to develop side by side the buddhi through prayer, through Gayatri Mantra. That is not the only mantra, but it is was supposed to be because it's the essence of the Vedas. So they say you do that simultaneously, and by the time you grow up with a very strong mind, very skillful mind, a very highly educated mind, but at the same time, a wise mind, which will enable you to use that education for a good purpose for yourself, for the whole humanity. So that was the idea. So both the Manomaya Kosha and Vijnanamaya Kosha have to be developed. But for that, you have to know the distinction. One type of education will develop the Manomaya Kosha, which any university, all the education system that we have is capable of doing that. The more you study, the more you practice, the more experiments you do, the more secular education that you have will definitely increase your skills. And the skillful habits will enable you to earn a living. But that will not guarantee happiness. So, unless you have a parallel education in development of the buddhi. So, this lopsided development is what is detrimental. So, spiritual life is not just changing your goals or changing your priorities in life. Even to survive in your career, in our professional careers, and lead a happy life, happy worldly life also, buddhi is necessary. That is why they insisted. Then the teachers would give you the choice whether you want to use both buddhi, because you have both. You have a highly developed mind, manas, and a highly developed buddhi. You use whichever you like. If you prefer to develop the buddhi further, then maybe you can be called as postgraduates. If somebody is happy with the both manas and buddhi development, then he leads a very happy life. That is why the four purusharthas are there. So you become a very good grahastha with the noble qualities. You know what dharma is, what adharma is. You follow dharma. That requires a highly developed buddhi. But there are some people like Buddha who he's called Buddha because of that, because he focused more on his buddhi. He said this skilled manas is he had a very skilled mind. He was given the best education. His father was very much afraid that he will renounce the world, he will become a spiritual person. So he wanted him to become a king, to succeed him and run. So he was given the best training of manas, archery, and all sorts of secular education was given, and deliberately was denied any kind of spiritual exposure. But that was not necessary because within him that spiritual fountain was there. So the moment he saw, then he understood, now I already lost so many years of my life. So let me start. Though his parents had not given that provision, and in fact had instructed that he should not be shown anything that will motivate him to lead a spiritual life with the because some of the astrologers had told that he'll become a monk. But Buddha chose buddhi over manas. He said, I have a very Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also, if you see his wonderful life. He was a great scholar, he and his friend. Both were studying Nyaya, and it is a very difficult subject. And he wrote a wonderful text. In those days, it is like writing a thesis to get a PhD. So the guru would ask them to write something, some original text on the Nyaya. So there was another friend of his who was, of course, not as intelligent as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Uh, what he did was, while they were traveling in a boat, going to meet their guru to submit their thesis, their whatever they had written, seeing his text, his friend thought, oh, if after reading this, my text nobody will bother. My guru will say that this is far, far superior. So he didn't say anything. He just had tears in his eyes. He thought, oh, this is a much better work which Chaitanya has written. So Chaitanya had a very broad heart, so very kind heart. So he asked him, why are you crying? He said, looking at your work, I think my work is will not be appreciated. So immediately, without thinking, Chaitanya Prabhu, Mahaprabhu threw the whole manuscript in the Ganges. He said, are you satisfied now? Now you submit yours. I will just, I'm out of the race. That means he had realized the futility of developing manas. Though he had developed a highly educated, his mind was highly developed due to the education that he received in Nyaya and all these subjects. But he knew the main goal is to develop the buddhi, which he was searching for a guru who will help him to do that. That though these are exceptions, like Buddha, like Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, they understand the importance of human evolution. So they want to explore more possibilities. They say we have attained to the highest skill that is possible through our through developing mental capacities, and we are very good at that. But that is not going to help us. I want to see whether I can explore my buddhi more. Mind, a highly developed mind will give me name, give me fame, maybe give me some money and all those things. But they are not satisfied. That is why we have named our subject Vedanta as the science of human possibilities. We think by exploring our intellectual possibilities, getting a few degrees, getting a PhD, and getting a good job and settling down, we think we have reached the capacity. But you cannot convince Buddha, you cannot convince Ramakrishna, you cannot convince Vivekananda. These people are not happy with their exploring the possibilities that are possible in human life. They said we if we wanted, Swami Vivekananda in fact was a graduate of Calcutta University. So he knew he had the capacity, had the intelligence to excel in that. He was very good in music and whatever sciences, the secular sciences he touched, he did really well. So he could have chosen to excel in that and do much more better than that. But then he found the life is too short and I have more possibilities, which according to the Upanishads, which according to his guru Sri Ramakrishna, these are to be explored. And if I don't give enough time right now when I'm young, because he was also a victim of the same type of education. Nobody had taught him that these prayers and all this. It's only by his chance meeting with Sri Ramakrishna that enabled him to understand the importance of spiritual education. Once he understood, then he understood his priorities. He decided to uh, pursue that education which will explore more and more human possibilities and make him a greater human being as Buddha, Christ, and all the great Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and all the prophets had done before him. So he said, if that is a superior type of education, para and apara vidya, apara is the lower knowledge, which the Upanishad says, both are necessary. Paracha apara. Apara also is necessary for our living. But Paravidya is that which is So acknowledging the higher education, acknowledging the higher possibilities, we have to go forward. So that is why we have to go to all these scientists in the field of spirituality. I call them scientists because they did not jump into any conclusion. They experimented, they found there are other possibilities. Just as in science, we go to higher and higher sciences, we go to space science, we go to the quantum science, and the science is not exhausted. Everybody wants to explore more and more possibilities within physical sciences. So, what about mental sciences? What about psychology, which is the king of all sciences? They also can open up many possibilities. There's a lot of research that has been done in especially yoga psychology and Vedanta. So that is why the study of the mind, both the lower mind or the reactive mind and also the higher mind or the buddhi, becomes a subject of our research. So Vedanta is a science of exploring higher and higher human possibilities. So that is why we have named this subject Vedanta as a science of human possibilities. So we have just come to the level of the mind now, because according to Swami Vivekananda in his Raj Yoga, he says why he considers yoga or in psychology to be the king of all sciences, including Western psychology. He said Western psychology is also improving. They also need to go beyond the body and beyond the uh, psychophysical system, because you can't trace everything to the body, everything to the mind, everything to the brain. So they have to just find out, are there higher possibilities? Do we exhaust all the possibilities by getting PhDs and all those things? You should not dismiss without being, if you have a scientific temper and a scientific approach, then you have to study what are the higher layers of the mind, if at all there are. And if there are higher layers of psychology, then why not study it? Why leave it? There are subjects where we go so deep. We are not satisfied with splitting the atom. We go more and more deeper, try to find the particles, God particle, this particle, that particle. Even physical sciences is not exhausted. Every year you give new Nobel Prize for that, for doing more and more, going deeper and deeper into the known physical world as we know it now. There are so many things which we don't know, but still we seem to have a very good knowledge of the external universe. But Swamiji says, you have to give equal importance, or if at least respect people who are giving equal importance to this great science of psychology, as Patanjali has said. Then the purpose of yoga, the real purpose of yoga, this today is a International Yoga Day, then we realize yoga is not about just the first two, three steps, which is asana, pranayama, and some kind of uh, peaceful coexistence, but just calming down the mind for a few minutes. That's not the goal. We have to go far deeper and find out the two layers of mind, find out what is buddhi, how it is different from manas, and how peace is to be attained, how happiness is to be attained, how we go higher and higher till we reach the goal of human life. So we'll conclude. Are there questions?
No.
Any question? Yes, yes, you can.
You say the goal is to develop the
Goal to?
the goal.
Yes, yes. According to goal is different according to different philosophies. Yoga, it may be called Kaivalya. In Advaita, it is known as realization of Brahman. Then Buddhism will say Nirvana is the goal. Yes, they found out the ultimate goal. Yes.
To develop the body.
Pardon?
The goal is to develop the body.
In?
Develop the buddhi is the goal.
No, development of buddhi is the one of the first steps we take to go towards the goal. Develop the buddhi is not the goal. Buddhi, I told you, we are not yet, we are discussing the mind now. The lower mind, manas and buddhi. Then there is Karana Sharira or Anandamay Kosha. We are just up to Vijnanamay Kosha. Buddhi is the first step. Development of buddhi is a way to reach the goal. That is why I said at the age of 6, between 6 and 8, when you more or less go to school, at that time you are asked to develop your buddhi so that when you grow up, along with your manas, you will develop buddhi also. That's just the beginning. Huh?
Sakshi,
Pardon?
Sakshi, you say?
Sakshi is different. Sakshi is the witness. No, buddhi is different. Buddhi is the discriminative capacity to know from good from the bad, to choose, make the right choice, what is good, what is higher, what is lower, to understand how to react, how to handle your mind. That is also buddhi, how to handle the lower mind, how not to react, how to react, why to react. All these questions, unless the buddhi is developed, you won't get answers. You'll react in a very good way, because if you are a good typist, you will type nicely. If you are a good computer programmer, you can program nicely. But whether you should program or spend the whole day in programming or have some time, go out for a walk, that buddhi will tell you. Or you will end up just developing one side of the personality, and buddhi will tell you what you should do if that is the goal. For that, goal is different. Goal is obviously not buddhi. Buddhi is just the instrument, just as our mind, the manas is the instrument for our skill education, the skills that we develop. Buddhi is the instrument for our spiritual education. That is just the starting. That's the basic minimum. That's why I said that was supposed to have been started. Most of us don't start at the age of 6. That means the moment you go to primary school, in those days maybe primary school was, so they thought that it cannot be developed after you grow up. You can perform the ritual just before marriage. The priest will tell, oh, if you have not done Upanayana, do it now. So one day you are pursuing your buddhi. In one day you can't become wise. Yeah.
What is Upanayana?
Upanayana is a yagnopavit, the thread ceremony. Upanayana is a thread ceremony has become a ritual now, but originally it was meant to be given to boys and girls also. Unfortunately, I don't know why, at what stage of our history girls were left out. But it is necessary for boys and girls, anybody who is between 6 and 8.
And it's the sign of wiseness.
Huh?
And that's the sign of wiseness.
Not
really
sign, it's a initiation into a development of buddhi. Dhiyo yona prachodayata. The Gayatri Mantra says, "O Lord Sun, as you are shining so brightly and making everything very clear when the sun shines, you make my buddhi bright enough so that I become wise." So it's a prayer for wisdom, and as you go on praying, you become wiser and wiser. That is what Gayatri is supposed to do. If you follow it, not as a ritual, but as a. But unfortunately, even if it is a ritual, it has to be done at a younger age, and without distinguishing between boys, girls, and any caste. Nowhere it is there. That is why Vivekananda's the new edition of letters. He is asking Pramadadas Mitra from Banaras. He said, "Can you show me a single reference?" Because he was very keen. He was wondering how India made it an exclusive privilege of Brahmins only. And in some parts of the country, it is a privilege of Kshatriyas. But Kayastha and Vaishyas and Shudra, they were denied. Why? Swamiji wanted to know at what stage of our Vedic history, of our Indian history, selfish people restricted it to Brahmins and also to boys. Why girls are left out? Are they not human beings? They also need buddhi. Everybody needs buddhi. Wisdom is not just for boys. But anyway, that is one of the ways. What I'm saying is Upanayana may not be everything. Just by wearing a sacred thread and feeding some people, you finish with the ritual and then forget Gayatri. Then that is not going to help. But what I'm saying is, even some Orthodox people, even one day before marriage, they will do this Upanayana, because without that, you're not supposed to marry. That's the only reason they do it. Just a few days. Yeah. So that is, I still, they even take it as a ritual to be done. Somehow do it. Main thing is marriage. Just do it because maybe they are afraid the ancestors will get angry on them or something like that. It's not out of love for that ritual. They have just been reduced to rituals now. Yeah.
You mentioned about Annamaya Kosha and Anandamaya Kosha.
Uh,
What's the difference?
oh, Anandamaya Kosha is the highest. When you even go beyond Vijnanamaya Kosha, as I said, when you are at the Vijnanamaya Kosha level, when your buddhi is developed, you live at a subtle level than Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, which is more subtle. When you develop that, Manomaya Kosha, all are simultaneously developed. So you have a healthy body and a healthy energetic body and an energetic mind. And then you go explore more possibilities, have an energetic and a wise mind. But even then, a wise person also sometimes cannot, is forced to take bad decisions. That is because the Anandamaya Kosha, where our samskaras are there, past impressions, they they come all of a sudden. So that's why good people sometimes do bad things. So to control that, you have to even explore the possibilities of reaching that Anandamaya Kosha. Anandamaya Kosha is Karana Sharira, according to another name that is given is Karana, means our causal body. All our past memories of not only this life, so many lives. So though we may have developed, now we think, oh, we have only good thoughts, we have never thought any bad thought in this life, good education, good samskaras, it's okay. But at the same time, we do not know if the Karana Sharira may have many, many old samskaras which will suddenly come out. So you have to handle that. That is what spirituality does. When you do awaken the Buddhi, Buddhi will shed light on the Karana Sharira also and remove whatever old samskaras which have a tendency to sprout as thoughts. They will be destroyed at the source. So that is why we do mantra for that. The only way, according to tantras, because you cannot reach there. You can reach the manas. You can through your buddhi you can watch the manas, how the thoughts are coming up now. But you do not know what thoughts you will get. Say after even 1 hour, you don't know. So to know that, you have to go far deeper. There you use the buddhi to buddhi or the spiritual practices that you do, the Gayatri mantra, all the other mantras, their only function is go and reach that Anandamaya Kosha and then think of transcend. Then you get final liberation, moksha, nirvana, or whatever it is. So they did not stop. Buddha and all these people, Patanjali and all, they went on and on and all. They found, oh, this is Vijnanamaya Kosha is just the beginning. There's one more layer. They wanted to know where does this, of course, I can control my thoughts by watching it, by becoming a Sakshi. But the moment I start doing other things, suddenly, from where are these thoughts coming? So they went deeper. Then they discovered the Anandamaya Kosha. So when you discover that and handle that and do sadhana, upasana for that, then that is also resolved. Then you reach the goal of life. Okay? Om Shanti 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 Hari Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu